Okay, we are live personal trainer talk. Body Design University was with Mr. Doug Blake, the man, the myth, the
Mhm.
legend, and Corey. We are here today, Wednesday at 2 o'clock. So for those of you that don't know, we ran these all last month as a way Q&A to help trainers kind of prepare for either their certification, prepare for their business, prepare for getting a job, whatever it is. So we've decided to move the time to 2 o'clock because more trainers are available at that time. Where Monday at 6 p.m. it's a little busy. So welcome. I'm glad to have everyone that's going to be dropping in right now. Doug and I have a good list of questions. It looks like it might be the Doug
Yeah.
show today. Looks like there's a
Yeah,
lot
there's
of
a
exercise
bunch.
science, a lot of uh, exam prep questions. Um, but listen, if you're out there and you have questions about your business, we're here to answer those too. Whatever they might be, invite you to be a part of this. Mark your calendar every Wednesday at 2 o'clock. Doug and I will be setting aside the schedule to help you make it happen. That's really it.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Mr. Blake, what's going on?
Well, I'll tell you, I got the list of questions, and that's what I love about this is that I just get to look at them literally right beforehand, and I'm just gonna try and absorb the questions, and I think we might have a little fun today. By the way, if you
I
don't, I
think
mean, it's up to you, but if you can let me draw maybe something and put it up in front of you, that might actually be.
Man, that would be pretty cool. I don't see why not. I mean, I don't know what that'll do to the Zoom here, but that would be pretty cool. I'm looking at all these questions, and so many of them are in regards to the prep. Is really cool.
Mhm.
But you see this you got a question from Kuwait.
Yeah, I saw that.
Did you notice that?
I saw that.
And then
Yes.
we've got all these different places. But guys, we got a great lineup. Before we get started, we got a couple things that we wanted to kind of tell you guys about. For those of you that didn't see it yesterday, Doug and I are very excited. I had another meeting today with a psychologist in regards to the new lesson that is going into the Body Design University personal trainer certification course. In the human behavior module, there's going to be a new lesson on mental health and self care that addresses some of the top coping strategies to help people, help the trainers, help their clients that is within their scope of practice and is a good fit. So, Doug, that was
Yeah.
another great conversation this morning, but we're excited about doing that. So, heads up on that. And for those of you that also don't know, basically in our personal training certification course, we literally walk you through the steps of, kind of understanding setting up the business. So if you're going to get a job somewhere, you're going to be really prepared. But if you're, getting ready to set up your own online personal training business or in-person personal training business, we kind of walk you through, brand building. We walk you through making phone calls and how to do a proper consultation. We walk you through pricing and packaging and stuff like that. So, but if you're not in the course, but you have questions, this is the time to jump on and ask. Right now, I think our student body is just over 4,000 active students
Yeah.
around the world right now, and basically, we're just excited to have everyone to be able to help. So. Those are a couple basic things. Doug, anything else you could think of before we get started?
Nope. I was just about to ask if how many people have already dropped in and what questions outside of the ones we're going to do here do we have?
Yeah, so basically, we've got some people dropping in, and I think what we'll do is, guys, if you have a question, all you have to do is literally, raise your hand or type in the chat that you have a question. We will ask that question, or we'll let you unmute yourself so you could ask the question. But Doug, we're going to work through that list that was sent into
Sure.
us
Sure.
first, and then we'll kind of bounce back and forth over to these folks that are on here live.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. Well, I'll tell you, I'll look at this. I'll just say this first one, and I'll just read it for you. How's that? And it's from Sarah. From Sarah. Now, Sarah doesn't say where she's from, but Sarah Wren. This is her question, and she says, "This may be a dumb question. No, it's never a dumb question." She says she's confused on the purpose of the exercise science 101 part of my online program. Will I be tested in this material too, or just on the material in the textbook? Um, so I'm assuming whether it's the Body Design University material or the NASM or the ACE, the answer is normally going to be yes. Just assume that you're going to be tested pretty much on anything that's going to be related, obviously, to exercise science. So that's a relatively simple question to answer. But Sarah, yeah, there's always going to be exercise science material, irrespective of which certification you're talking about. You don't have that in your question, but just keep in mind, Sarah, just like with anything else, whether it's the Body Design University or any of the NCCA accredited organizations, your goal ultimately is to go through the study process and then do the practice exams. Now we have a number of practice exams for both NASM and ACE. And so those are going to be critical to really understand what the testing environment is going to look like as far as the materials. And that's a suggestion. So if you're confused on any of the materials that you're going through, you'll ultimately find out what's represented by looking at those practice exams. That's why they are critical. They are a very critical component of the teaching apparatus that we have put in place at BDU. Anything else on that, Corey?
No, that's right on point. Now, yeah, I'm not sure if this. I'm guessing that's that's an ACE student,
That's
because
what I would think.
I'm pretty sure the Exercise Science 101
Yeah.
is the materials, that extra book that come
Yeah,
on the
the
side.
additional
So,
book.
um,
Yeah. And
so
that was up to the 5th edition. So for those that don't know, and ACE is into the 6th edition, and they're no longer using that particular additional exercise 101 book. So
I think one big thing that we missed, Doug, was um, to notify everyone about the audiobooks.
oh yeah.
This is a big release that took place this week. And so, for those of you guys that don't know, we have, and I believe we're the only ones, basically have a full audio book for both the NASM and ACE, the NASM 7th edition and the ACE 6th edition, as a part of our program. Really cool. And I know that's going to help a lot of people, like someone like myself, and I know a lot of people are similar. Sitting down in front of a massive textbook for hours is just not appealing, but listening to it is a big deal, and that's really helpful. So those are
Right.
completed. And Doug, you want to tell them anything about that before you go on to the next
You,
question?
the key here with audiobooks is that not only is it just a matter of listening, because we do know that the audiologic learner will function better from a memorization perspective when they hear things. But more to the point is that the recommendation is not just to listen to it, but to follow along. Because again, we know enough. There's enough research to tell us from the learning style perspectives that it's not just one learning style. Pretty much everybody has multiple components of learning styles. So the audiobook is not just listening to it, which you can definitely do, but the suggestion for maximum retention and memorization is to use the audiobook while you're actually reading it. So remember, there's that visual component. And then of course, Corey, what do we have in our hand while we're reading and studying and listening, right? We use
Yeah.
the tactile sensation
Do you have one of
component.
those there, Doug, in your office?
I do not. I do not. But
I we have one downstairs. I
yeah,
think maybe on.
we got to bring that and show folks
Hold
because
on, let me see. I might have one right around the
okay,
corner.
okay. And for those of you folks that don't know, we understand that that there are limitations from a studying perspective. But if Corey can show you, we simply use a tactile sensation ball. These are things that you can buy pretty much anywhere. And that component is actually going to help to sort of distract the tactile stimuli that some folks have to deal with. So reading the material, and then if you can listen to it simultaneously while you're reading it, remember the goal is memorization and retention of that material. Reading is fine or listening is fine, but reading and listening simultaneously for some folks can be very effective. And then if you're able to use use one of these textural balls, these tactile components, that will help as well. So, but if you don't have it, Corey, that's all right.
Oh man, sorry. I literally we have a bunch of them down, in the learning center, but I couldn't make that trip all the way. I thought that I had a couple maybe in the office next door, but we don't. But anyhow, it's a little ball with all the little, you know,
Yeah, a little tactile,
cool.
tactile thing.
So,
So
audiobooks, it's the way to go.
yes, yeah, it helps.
Okay.
Are you ready for another question or?
Yeah. Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So yeah. So you mentioned we got a question here from Habiba in Kuwait. Okay, so that's pretty cool. And Habiba says, anyone here currently studying for the ACE CPT exam using the sixth edition? Now, before I go on with the question, I'm just going to tell you I've seen this a number of times um, in both the ACE and the NASM materials. It's not an issue on their part, but I'm just going to say I've seen this before. It says, I'm having trouble understanding why there's a difference with repetitions and intensity recommendations for resistance training. And Habiba goes on to say that um, muscular endurance is less than or equal to 67% of one rep max in chapter 9. But yet in chapter 11, it says less than 50% of one rep max. Normally, it's not that you're misreading, Habiba. What you have to do is you have to make sure you understand the context with which that information is being given. So if it's in different chapters, it's going to be because there's a different emphasis or focus for a particular program design element. So normally in ACE, they will jump around with different recommendations. There's not an inconsistency. It's just a question of what it is they're simply trying to focus on. So again, I'd have to literally go back and look. But if there is something like that, take a screenshot of it. And you can send it. You can send it to me, dblake at bodydesign.com. Literally, take a screenshot, just email it to me, and I'll take a look at it. Another question is, can anyone explain the planes of motion in a way that I will understand? Wow, I don't know. That's Azia from Pensacola, just northwest of me, right? A couple
Pensacola
hours.
where?
Pensacola, Florida.
Nice.
Yes, yes. So can anyone explain the planes of motion? Um, Azia, I'll tell you, the planes of motion are really, really pretty straightforward. There are three of them: sagittal, frontal, transverse. Sometimes folks simply just look at those three words and they get confused and they just go, I don't even. Well, look, the way I've always explained it is with sagittal, I always think about a soldier. I always think about a soldier marching. So sagittal is a soldier marching. Sagittal, soldier. So think of a soldier marching. How do they move their arms and how do they move their legs? Everything is forward and backward, right? Everything is this way, right? They march forward and backward. When I was in the army, that's what we did, right? You know, this forward, but you don't move side to side and you don't turn your head and you don't do jumping jacks. Everything is, so always think of a soldier, right? Legs are forward and backward. So all movements that occur in this soldier-like movement, we call it flexion and extension. That's where those terms come in, right? Flexion and extension occur in the sagittal plane. That's why I always thought about the sagittal plane. You can think about a wall closing you in on either side, and you simply can't move anything but your arms forward, hands forward, head, right? Cervical flexion, cervical extension. So that's sagittal plane. Frontal plane is going to be like doing jumping jacks. So that's the way I always remembered frontal plane, is I just do jumping jacks. Frontal plane is any movements out to the side, right? Up and down, like a lateral raise, lifting your legs out to the side. Any movement like that is in the frontal plane. And or you can think about two walls, one in front of you and one behind you. And the only movement you can make is literally moving your arms up to side. You can't move forward and backward because the wall is in front of you and the wall is behind you. That's the way I always thought of the frontal plane. And then transverse plane is only going to be rotational. Anything rotational for the transverse plane. We call it internal and external rotation. So anytime you're, twisting your hands, right? We have specific terms for internal and external rotation at the wrist. You've heard supination, right? Supination and pronation, right? You've heard those terms probably. And those are just internal and external rotation, but we just give them special names. Why we give them special names, I don't know, but somebody gave them a special name, right? So that's internal, external rotation. Any twisting at the hips, any movement of the feet inward and outward. There are some special names. So that's the thing with planes of motion is that you first got to understand, visually what we're talking about. Soldier sagittal, right? Jumping jacks frontal, and then just rotation, twisting movements, transverse. And then you just got to know, then you just memorize the terms that go along with that. Flexion, extension, abduction, adduction, internal, external rotation. So did you understand that, Corey?
Man, I was just like, I was just barely following along on that one. I mean, you had me most of it. Like you had me like most of the time. I think I retained about 75%. So
Wow,
that was
well,
pretty
look,
good.
I hope Azia that helps you.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, that was great, Doug. That definitely, I think, is going to help a lot of people. Doug, we're going to bounce over to. We've got a couple of questions, hands going up on the
okay,
live, some of the attendees, and then we'll come back to these questions. But
sure.
before we jump over to those, we got another one that came in first, and this is from Bart. This is from Bart, and Bart is asking, let's see here. Bart is asking, how often is it okay to provide free services to family and friends? So
That's a good one.
yeah, this is a really good one. It's kind of business related.
Yeah.
How often is it okay to provide free services to family and friends? So I learned my lesson, and basically, and this is the coaching that I've been giving personal trainers ever since learning that lesson. Really simple is that, you know, I um, I don't charge friends and family for personal training, like, ever. Like, I would never do that. I did that once upon a time early in my career, and it was just not the best scenario for a lot of reasons. But basically, for me, my network of friends is very small, and it's very tight. So I've known my friends for a very long time. They're very dear to me. They're not acquaintances that I just have on Facebook. So I've got a handful, about a dozen really good folks. And I would never want to jeopardize those relationships in any way, shape, or form in charging them for personal training services. And I've trained a lot of those friends that I've just mentioned. But so to answer your question, um, how often? Well, look, if you're doing one-on-one training, that's really tough because basically, your time is money, and you have a very limited inventory. When I first started off, I did it, friends and family, to get really comfortable with training, and I think that's always a great idea, is to help friends and family as much as you can, and as long as your schedule's not booked, why not? Why not help them and do that? Now, to a certain degree. If I gave you a number, I'd say maybe two or three people. So don't load your schedule up because you still need that time to perform business operations and other tasks. But a couple, two to three people, I think, is a good number. But I would never charge them. That's for sure. And that's it. And if they're, I guess, compliant, if your friends and family, like, they're following the program and they're putting in effort, then continue to do it for as long as you have the availability. But if your schedule's getting booked, maybe set it up to where you say, hey, look, I'm going to put you through a 12-week training program. And basically, I'm going to give you all the help that you need. I'm going to help you with your meal plan, your training, everything. And at the end of this 12 weeks, you're kind of on your own. You can set the stage like that. Now, if you're doing small group training, it's a little bit different because it's really pretty cool because your inventory is like, if you're doing small group training of up to 5 people, I mean, you've just multiplied your inventory of availability significantly, and you could put them in the slower times. That could be more of an ongoing scenario where you're working with those family members or friends in a long period of time. But I would establish the boundaries with those friends and family members, make them very clear when they start with you as far as what you're expecting from them. And this is really crazy, but I'm telling you, I'll give you a quick example. I had a friend that I trained, a really dear friend of mine, and I'll never forget it. It was small group training. I had, I think, 3 or 4 clients, and he was in this workout. And this guy's he's in great shape. I think he was like 9% body fat at the time. He just wanted to get a little bit leaner. And basically, I'm calling out these exercises, and I'll never forget it like it was like yesterday. And, I think I called out, it was a burpee with a push up. And he turned and looked at me after I called it. And now I've got 3 or 4 paying customers that he's training with. And he says, "No, you do those." And I thought to myself, are you kidding me right now? But it was just, it was, so it's hard. Be a notification where you can unmute yourself and just fire away with your question.
Hey guys, thanks for having me back. Happy to be here again. So I'm in a bit of a predicament.
Happy to have you. Happy to have you, Mr. Jonathan.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm in a bit of a predicament here. So recently I've been offered the opportunity to, I guess, franchise with a certain chain that will go unmentioned. And I was wondering, I really would like to start my own business and like to see that through. And, when it comes to a situation like that, which is better? Should I go ahead and pursue my dreams of opening my own gym, or should I join that franchise, that opportunity that I have? Which one do y'all think would be better going forward for me?
Yeah. That's a great question. So I would ask you what your level of, like, literally what your level of pain tolerance is. What your risk and pain tolerance is. And Jonathan, the reason why I say that is because, starting your own business today as a personal trainer is incredible. And there's so much opportunity. There's more people right now hiring personal trainers than literally ever before. And it's not just post or during the pandemic with online training. It's just in general. So our industry revenue continues to grow. More people are hiring personal trainers, but that also means that more people are becoming personal trainers, and there's a lot of competition. So you really got to stand out. When it comes to opening up your own business, if you're speaking, Jonathan, specifically about a studio or a club, a franchise versus opening up your own brand, I mean, the big difference is this, is that some people, it's like living in an HOA. Think of it that way. If you're in an HOA, you get all these pretty manicured things, all this stuff kind of done for you. You pay a fee and they cut the grass and they make sure that the lighting is good and they make sure that the streets are cleaned and you got a little clubhouse and all this stuff. But if you're in a private community, you're hoping that your neighbors keep it tight, but you can kind of do what you want. And you're not, if you want to put a pickup truck in the front yard or in the driveway, you can. And if you want to do this or that, you can. So it's very similar to like a franchise. Franchising is a great option. It really is. But it's not for everyone. So you really got to think about really 2 things. One, do you like following rules? And are you willing to 100% embrace somebody else's business system and brand? And if you are, then a franchise can be really good for you because if you're willing to take on somebody else's brand and make it yourself and make it your own and give it everything you got, and you like systems that have already been developed, then that's great. The other script is basically you're going to build all those systems. Like for me, when I started body design personal training, the most exciting thing for me was building those systems, like building the documents, the software, building the apparatus, the payroll, all those things was as exciting for me as having a customer. So I really thrive on that and really have enjoyed it. And that's what led us to being able to have, personal trainers in all these states and all over the, the Southeast. But there's a lot of pain in doing that. Like setting up all these systems is a lot of like, there's a higher chance of losing money. There's a higher chance of failing. There's a higher chance of headache. There's a higher chance of sleepless nights. But if you're like, so if you're kind of like a half foot entrepreneur, then a franchise is a great option. But if you're like a full-blown entrepreneur, a lot of full-blown entrepreneurs would have a hard time going into a franchise because they're builders. They want to create also and kind of develop their own thing. But I hope that helps, Jonathan. That's the best way I can explain the difference between the two. Of course, with a franchise, you're paying a fee, a franchise fee, and a royalty to that company for expediting and all those systems and that branding. Whereas with your own, you're not paying a fee, but you got to build all those things yourself. So that's the big difference. Doug, any thoughts? I think that's a really, really good question.
Good example with the HOA.
You like that?
And the pickup truck in the driveway. So well done. Well done. Yeah, no, I obviously I agree with everything you were just saying. And the franchise model can take a lot of stress off of those components. If you're risk averse, yeah. I mean, if you can take on that pain, like you were saying, if you can take on that pain, sleepless nights, the struggle, the agita that you're going to get, and the gastrointestinal distress, then go for it. But exactly.
And some people, Doug, some people are really built for that. Like they thrive in that. And a lot of people don't understand, like there's people out there that thrive, literally they thrive on that. And I was actually one of them.
But by the way, the fact that he would ask that question is good, because the sad part about this is that most trainers simply won't even ask the question. And and then they step into these scenarios where they're risk averse, and they find themselves after 6 months, 8 months, or whatever the case is, floundering and unable to open their own business. But it's a great question.
Jonathan, are you still there with us? Did that answer your question? Do you have any follow-up to that? Is there anything else that we can help you with?
Yeah, no, actually that helped a lot. I just been thinking, I'm not gonna lie to y'all, I am kind of a little bit excuse me. Exactly that. Yeah. So that's giving me a lot to think about now, and I certainly appreciate it. Thanks, Villains.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. You got it. Okay. Let's before we bounce over, let's go over to Areli. We've got a question. I see a hand up. I'm going to send you a notification, Areli, where you can unmute yourself and fire away.
Hello?
Yes. Hey, Areli, you there?
Hey guys, thanks for having me. I'm here.
Of course. Tell us, what do you got? What's your question? How can we help?
So I'm trying to start my own gym, hopefully in 2 years. And I'm trying to find is there like an exact location that I should be scouting for a building for, near like restaurants or shopping centers, or just specifically like
good question,
in a certain city or anything?
Yeah. Great question, Areli. So we about 3 or 4 years ago, we really sat and contemplated this really strong because sometimes they say in business, location, but here's what we found, Areli, is that today, most of the lead generation for personal trainers, personal training studio, health club, whatever, most of the lead generation is coming off the internet. So what that means is, let me give you an example. Let's just say, I'm going to try and use my hand as a map. Let's just say, that this is your gym. Okay, over here by this finger right here. This is a location that you're thinking about. Now, actually, you know what?
Oh boy.
Oh man, Doug,
you're gonna go for it, ain't you?
I'm just hoping I don't spell any of these words wrong. Okay, hold on, Areli. We're gonna. For you, Areli, we're going to take it to another level.
A whole nother level. Wow.
Okay, so check this out. This is really important, but this makes a lot of sense. And I think you're going to be able to, this is going to help a lot of trainers out there. So let's just imagine in a couple different locations. And again, in real estate and business, sometimes they say location, 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 but just hear me out. So let's say option A is a location, and let's just say it's $3,000 a month rent. Okay, option A. Now, option A is off the beaten track. It's basically, down the road. It's in an industrial park. It's not on the main road. It's not in a shopping center. It's off the beaten track, okay? But it's only $3,000 a month. Now, option B, for example, option B is $6,000 a month rent. Now, these are pretty close to real numbers, okay? So, but option B, okay, that's $6,000 a month, okay? Option A and option B. That is in a strip plaza. It's a high rated. We're going to go with A rating retail space. So it's in a really good plaza. It could be next to a Publix, a Kroger, a Whole Foods, but it's in a plaza, or it's on a main road, or it's in a main strip that's really just beautiful. And by the way, just make a mental note of this. Everyone out there that's listening, please do not forget, never put a personal training studio on the second floor. Don't do it. Don't put a personal training studio on the second floor. There's a lot of reasons behind that, but just don't do it. If you're ever looking for, it's so crazy to think, but people that love exercising, it's like, counterintuitive, but they don't like going upstairs to their gym. They literally don't like walking upstairs to go to their gym. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so back to this. Option A, $3,000 a month. Option B is $6,000 a month. Now, here's the thing. We did some math and we tried to figure this out. We said, how many clients, okay, and I know this because I've got a location right now in what is called a prime area. It's got about 35,000 cars driving in front of it every single day. It's in a high rent strip center. And what we did is we did the math and we said, okay, in this little test is, if we moved our location, let's just say that we're paying $6,000 a month rent. If we moved it to, about a mile or two down the road off the beaten track where no one can drive by and see it, but it's the same size space. It's the same size space. What would happen if we took that $3,000 that we used to pay in rent and we put it in advertising, Instagram, Facebook, or whatever? Does option B create enough new business every month to warrant that $3,000 extra in rent? And what we found in every demo, every formula, every time I did this test, is that it was always best to go off the beaten track and take that $3,000 and literally put it into advertising. So the way that this would work is that instead of going with a prime location, you go with the secondary location. That's still a nice space. It's clean outside. It's a decent building. It's got to be nice. Okay. These are personal training clients, but it's just not on the prime road. It's not in a prime. And you take that $3,000, because what we found is, on average, in a personal training scenario like this, if we're lucky, we're getting about 5 new customers a month. So what we used is data. We don't use making decisions based on what we think. We just pull data. So we said, okay, if we put 3,000, if we're only getting 5 new customers that are doing what we call a drive-by or a walk-in, that's the lead source. If we move that $3,000 over to this location, we're going to get a whole lot more than 5 customers off of $3,000 in ad spend. It's a no-brainer. So I hope that helps you. It's not about, finding, restaurants or anything like that. You want to negotiate the best possible deal that you can, and you can go off the beaten track, because their first impression today, now it wasn't like this 10 years ago or 15 years ago, but their first impression, okay, of your business and the engagement is going to be on the internet. So they're gonna inquire through the internet, and then it doesn't, as long as you're a mile, or 2 from that other location, it doesn't matter where you are. And I would go off the beaten track all day long, pay the lower rent. You're probably going to have better parking scenarios. Normally, when you're off the beaten track, you have better parking scenarios than in a prime location. So, Areli, Doug, any other thoughts on that?
It's funny because that has entirely changed since when I first started, right? And so it's really very interesting where 25 years ago, 30 years ago, it was the exact opposite, is that we were actually looking, we wanted eyes from the street. That was a big component, is we wanted eyes from the street. And we literally we put I mean, billboards. We spent
Yes.
money. They used to have these things way back when called billboards. I don't know if you've seen
Right.
them or, but they don't work. Not
Yeah.
any longer. It's funny we say this because do you remember? I don't know if you remember this, but we used to go to businesses and we used to put little lead boxes. Do you
Oh my
remember?
gosh. Of course. Lead
Yeah.
boxes. That was,
I used, yes.
and
Yeah, I mean,
we still do that today, guys, but we just do it online. We got
it's
these
just
lead boxes
online.
online. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's funny, Doug.
Yeah.
Aurelie, I hope that answered your question. Let me, do you have any follow-up to that? Anything else that we can help you with?
Thank you so much. And I do have one more question.
Yeah, shoot.
So roughly how much money do I need to operate my business, like day to day, year by year, month by month?
Well, that's tough, really, because basically, the way that it works is that it really depends on the type of business, the personal training business that you're going to have. So, for example, I've had different personal training businesses, and one like online training business could be like $5,000 a month in operating costs and overhead. I can have a personal training studio that could be an operating expense of anywhere from 10 to 30 grand a month. I could have a personal training, management company or in-home for. So, what type of business? And I'll try to give you a range, but what type of business, personal training business, are we talking about? Are we talking about an independent online? Are we talking about a studio?
Independent.
Okay, so independent online or just like your own facility?
My own facility.
Okay, so as your own facility, basically, depending on the square foot. So, for example, if it's a small studio, 1,000 square feet, it could be, as low as operating expenses could be as low as, I would say, about 10 grand a month, and that includes like everything: rent, advertising, some, cleaning expenses, power, all the to. Again, this is just an approximate, but just to kind of you know give you some food for thought. Now, if you go up to let's just say 5,000 square foot space, you could be growing the monthly operating expenses, not including payroll that's directly attached to the sessions. Give or take, I'm gonna say $20,000 to $25,000 a month. Now, I know for a lot of trainers that are listening to this, that's like, whoa, how am I going to do this? How am I going to start a business, have $10,000 a month for operating expense? Well, your clients are going to offset this. So, and this is something we can get into more detail at another time. But the way it works is that you pick a location and you're going to do a grand opening. And while they're in construction, you're going to be enrolling members. So literally, like, they've got a construction for give or take about 90 days. While that construction is going on, you've got big signs saying coming soon, personal training studio, and you're going to be meeting with people, doing consultations and building up. You're not going to collect any revenue right then and there, but what you're going to do is you're going to set them up so when the gym opens, you can open the place with as much revenue as possible. And we have seen it where some studios have opened with the monthly operating expense that they needed. So, for example, if it's 1,000 square feet, if they do it right during the pre-sale, is what we call it, during that 90-day constructions, we can have the operating expense. And I've had scenarios where I had brought in more members. I had a location here in Georgia where I opened up a personal training studio, and we opened the doors with $20,000 in monthly receivables. So as soon as we opened, we had everyone come in, we turned on their billing, and they were able to start training. So, it's all relative. Just remember that the operating expense is directly tied to the size, the type of business and you're going to be bringing in the customers to kind of offset that. I really hope that helps out. Thank you so much for participating, being here, and
Good questions.
I hope you have a great week.
Thank
Good
you so much.
questions.
Thanks for having me.
You got it, Doug. So it's funny. I'm thinking like maybe I'll put together like a little formula chart. You remember those old what did they call the slide rulers where they had like the multiplication tables?
Slide rule.
Okay, yeah, those things. For like personal training, the average personal training studio startup cost. So you move it to the square footage, and it'll tell you like Startup cost, approximate, of course, approximate, because it all depends on the finishing. If they go like, really nice
Yeah.
floor, like putting marble floors down versus rubber mats and stuff. But an approximate startup, an approximate monthly operating, approximate payroll, approximate revenue each month that they need to hit.
Could you do that in every major city in the country? Because boy, that would just be.
See, now you had to you had to throw a wrench in it. But as I'm thinking about it, to
Yeah,
answer your
that would be.
question, yes, we could, because we can do a little flywheel. Dude, we are going to invent a slide rule flywheel where it spins like this, and you turn it to not only the square footage, but then you shift the ruler to the state,
Ah.
or the province. If you're in
Mhm.
Canada, I don't know. So
That's a great idea.
just an idea. All right, let's get back to this because we're getting down on time here, guys. Thank you so much for everyone out there. We see everyone in the group. We're going to try and get through all these questions. We're going to bounce back over to this list that we have. And Doug, if you want to pick it back up, I think we're on Rachel from Orlando, Florida next.
Rachel Robertson, does anyone have advice on how to take on learning chapter 9 in the Exercise Professional Guide to Personal Training textbook? Anatomy isn't my strongest subject because there are 206 bones to memorize and learn. Okay. Well, look, Rachel, great question. That is we get this all the time. The real question, forget the bones, forget the names of the muscles. The key here is the main concept of memorization and learning. That is the key to your question, because it doesn't matter what the material is. It's a question of how do you learn and how do you memorize. At one time, sure, I had memorized every bone in the body. I could probably name 4 of them now, right? Because they have no relevance for the most part. Well, more than 4, but you get the idea.
Right.
And the key here is it's not that it's just the chapter, right? It's any type of material. So irrespective of the chapter you're in, you got to do it like we highly recommend you with any elements of learning and memorization. Is remember, learning is first and foremost is memorization, right? So you've got to read. Reading is not studying. Reading begins the study process. So you're going to do this just like you do anything else that you would try to learn in the textbook, which is to read it, write it, rewrite it, and say it over again, recite. So that's the mantra: read, write, recite. That captures, for the vast majority, not everybody, but the vast majority of learners will be able to retain and memorize the vast majority of material that they're reading and looking at. If you read it, and then you have here's your pad, and as you're reading the material, you are rewriting it, because reading is for very few people is it effective. Reading is not an effective way to memorize anything unless you have that gift, and that's less than 1% of the population probably. So you got to read it, and then you've got to rewrite it. So you could literally memorize 206 bones in the body if you just look at each name and rewrite it and over, and then say it out loud. The humerus, you rewrite it and you say it out loud. Radius, write it down. And if you do that over and over, the ulnar, write it down. Sacral iliac, right? All of those bones, the femur, right? The tibia, the fibula, you write down. You don't need to
Well, I
memorize
think you're
the
up
bones.
to like 9.
You don't have to memorize the bones of the hand. And honestly, you probably don't even have to memorize. I'll just be honest with you, on the exams, not like you have to memorize the names of bones. There's maybe 8 or 9 total, right? The femur, because that's where the major muscles of the legs attach to, right? The pelvis, the sacrum. You don't have to memorize all of the thoracic vertebrae, cervix. You don't have to memorize the names of those bones, and you don't have to memorize the names of the bones in your skull. You just got to know it's the skull. So what you got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I don't know. It's less than 10. So just keep that in mind. And one way to really know what's important is you got to get our study guide. Okay, we've got study guides for this. We have general study guides that will basically guide you, because if you read through the study guide, you'd go, I don't have to memorize all the bones in the body. You don't even have to memorize all the muscles in the body. That's not what a personal trainer needs to know. You need to know function and kinesiology and some biomechanics, but you don't have to memorize the names of 206 bones unless you want to. But remember, learning starts with memorization. You've got to memorize material, and the way you memorize is going to be unique to you. So read it, rewrite it on a sheet of paper. I say it all the time. I probably have gone through literally, thousands of pads to learn things. That's how I do it. I read it, I rewrite it, and I say it out loud to myself, and my family gets concerned because they hear me talking to myself
Mhm.
a whole
I know
lot.
they, I know
So
they, I know they do too.
oh boy. So I hope that helps, Rachel.
Yeah. So, Doug, before we go on to this next one, I want to take a second real quick. Basically, for everyone that is out there running their own personal training business, and whether it be online or in person, or you have your own personal training studio, it's really important that you have a good accounting system set up. Just really important that you have, because in a lot of cases, if you use a CRM or some type of operating system, you're tracking basically the total revenue that you have coming in, but it doesn't tell the true story of the financial health of your little business. And I would highly recommend, I wish I had learned this when I first started. I wish this was said to me when I first started, that you start and develop really good systems right out of the gates. So, we've been in business 21 years now, and it took me 2 years to really get it dialed in. And then it's been a constant struggle making sure that I keep it accurate and updated. But it's been a long time. Well, today I have my monthly review. And my bookkeeper that works directly with our CPA for the companies comes in, and we've set up, this monthly meeting to go over the P&L and the balance sheet, and just try to understand what's going on. And the reason why I bring this up is because we use QuickBooks. It's something that we recommend, really simple, but you have to use it. And what QuickBooks does, it tells you not only the top line number, but it tells you about all the expenses. They all get transaction and kind of journaled into the right chart of accounts. And then you have this report at the end of the month. It's simply called a profit and loss statement that tells you this is your income, these are all your expenses, and this is truly what you made. And then you have a separate report, which is your balance sheet, and it talks about your liabilities and assets. Well, this is something that, I've been doing for a long time now. And so I highly recommend I just share that with you. But, today in the session, it's like I learned something new. I've been doing this for so long. I learned something new every time I meet with my bookkeeper. She's been fantastic, and is really helping us keep, all the companies on point, reporting back to me exactly what's going on, asking questions. And I would highly recommend that you do that. If I gave you a number, I say, okay, if your personal training business is over, I don't know, let's say 20,000 a month. So, you, like any amount of revenue, you have QuickBooks, and you have a bookkeeper and accountant that you meet with. But if it goes over 20,000 a month, I would highly recommend a monthly meeting to sit down with your bookkeeper and review the materials, review have them create reports so you can look at them, ask questions, and go through it. So today we did that, and she came by, and again, she's been fantastic. She's been helping us a lot. And she literally had, I didn't know this, but she had wrote her own accounting book. Our bookkeeper literally has an accounting book on Amazon right now. And so I'm just going to kind of give her a little plug. I think you guys should really take a look at this book. It's called Accounting 101. Her name is Marjorie Phelps. I call her Marge. But basically, this is really great stuff. I took a minute to kind of peruse this beforehand, and these are things that I just wish that I knew, or I'd learned in my first couple years. And some of this stuff I haven't, I didn't learn until 5-10 years in business. And so it's a really simple read. But it's called Accounting 101. You could find it on Amazon. It's by Marjorie Phelps. Check it out. Highly recommend this. And it's going to give you some basic accounting information and principles that you can apply into your personal training business right away. Now, look, if you're going to get a job somewhere, I get it. You don't have to worry about any of this. You become a 1099 contractor or W-2. But if you're going to start your own online personal training business or in-person you got to have these accounting systems set up. So go check out the book Accounting 101 by Marge.
Do you remember when personal training was all about doing dumbbell curls and squats?
You know, it's amazing that from that time, now, you know, our industry is literally over $10 billion. You know, and so it's come a long way, and it continues. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
it's amazing.
just, yeah, it's exploding. And you
Yeah.
know, I hope people understand the importance of, you know, for me, if nothing else, Doug, after today's meeting, it gave me a little bit of clarity, a little bit of relief, because I'm looking at all the numbers, you know, and we have multiple companies. Okay. So we're looking at the numbers from multiple companies, but it just gives a snapshot. It says, this is where we're at. And
Right.
it just reminds me of things. And I hope the trainers out there
And
get started with it.
and honestly, you know, what we're really doing and what you're explaining is you're pulling, you're pulling trainers. You know, it's uncomfortable to pull them into kicking and screaming into a component of the personal training industry that has just not really been well explained or shown to the average trainer. And so we want to be able to do that, because there is there's a business element to this. That really is important. By the way, even if you are a W-2, and we know many trainers who work at health clubs and work at boutique one-on-one training centers, but they also need to understand. They also need to understand that they're professionals, NCCA accredited. When you get the certification, you are technically a professional in the healthcare continuum. You got to know these things, even if you don't use them, like you said, on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, you know, I think the biggest thing, Doug, for me to want to share that and have them go read this book or go read some book on accounting and get their system set up is, I've asked many trainers, many over the years, over the last decade or so, what their revenue was look like, what the net profit was, and they had no idea.
No clue.
Like, and in some cases, they gave me numbers of their gross revenue,
Mm,
saying this is what I made. I'm like,
yeah,
no, no. What did you make? Like, what did you make? Like after all your expenses, what was
right.
and um, and I'm talking about gyms, like full blown gyms with 10, 20, 30 people working there,
Mm.
and the gym not having a profit and loss statement or understanding what they made each month. It was bizarre to me. And
Or still using index cards to
oh
track
my
clients.
gosh, could you imagine? So, okay, we got a little bit more time here. Let's see if we can knock out a couple more of these questions that we have on this list.
This is a good one. The from I hope I don't butcher this name, Gurav Narang. Gurav doesn't say where Gurav is from, but he's got a good question. Um, I've seen this a couple of times in the groups. Some folks asking this, and of course we get this all the time in the live course. Why cervical is lordosis and sacral is kyphosis. So you got to know, I'm getting confused. I saw lateral spinal column view, cervix is inward, sacral is outward, yada, yada. So it's actually really pretty simple if we can get by the terms, right? It's normally the terms that get people. They see words they've never seen before, and that's what throws them off the track. So if you see the word kyphosis, you're so focused on you don't even know how to spell it, right? So you look at it and you go, wait, kyphosis, what does that mean? Well, again, we're in personal training, so we do have to understand some basic anatomical terms, and lordosis and kyphosis simply define either a convex or a concave positional lateral view position of the spinal column, right? Everybody should know that the spine has an an S curve, right? So it's not straight from the side view. It's got an S curve, and we simply look at the different ways that the spinal column is shaped, right? It's got these curves in it, and so we arbitrarily say that this shape is called this, and then the opposite shape is called this. So how about I draw this for you? Can I do that?
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Okay. So
Show
we go
us.
like this, and whoop. So I don't know if you can, does that come up?
Yeah.
Can you
Yep.
see that? I
Yeah,
mean,
that
what is
looks like
that?
that
That's
looks
just a,
like
it's just a curve, right? What does it look like? Looks like,
that looks like
okay,
a sideways
it's, yeah. So
mountain or hill.
these are just curves. So all we're going to do is we're just going to give a term, a name to a curve that has um, its shape coming out this way, right? This way.
Hmm.
And there's another one down here. And then there's an opposite curve over here. And there's a tiny little opposite curve down here. Now, if I say it to you that way, that's easy to understand. Okay, got that?
Yep, we're following.
So if the curve up in the neck area is arbitrarily termed this, and this is the cervical spine, right? The cervical, right? So the head is up here.
Mhm.
If the curve is this way, we're going to call it, we're just going to give it a term. It's called lordosis. Okay. So anything on your spine that's shaped like that, that's shaped this way, right? With the curve going that way, we're going to call that lordosis. And if there's a curve on your spine that's shaped the other way, we're going to call it kyphosis. And that's the way it works. So now that we've said that, we have, what's this? Everybody, that's a lordotic curve because the curve itself is shaped like this. Then there's an opposite shape in the thoracic spine, and there's 12 thoracic vertebrae. We're going to call that kyphosis or the kyphotic curve. And then this one looks just like the cervical, doesn't it? Well, that's in the lumbar spine.
Hmm.
And so the lumbar spine is the same shape as the cervical spine in that way, right? And we call that lordosis. What confuses people is they get down to the sacral or the sacrum. And that's such a small part at the very bottom of the spinal column that we miss that. But that's also, what kind of shape is that? Can you see that?
That looks like a straight line.
Well,
No?
geez, I shouldn't have, the point is that it's going to be called whatever the proper shape is for that particular area of the spine. And so the terminology can be confusing only because they're terms we've just never used before. But all you have to do is look at the shape. Look at the shape and ask yourself a question. Is that the same shape as the cervical or is it the same shape as the thoracic spine? And in the case of the sacrum, it's the same shape as the thoracic spine. So we call it kyphotic. And that's the reason why we have kyphosis inward or sacred is outward, lordosis.
Let me ask you this, Doug. So great job explaining that. Like I said, I learned something new every day. But why is it important? Just like in a cliff notes, like real quick, why is it important that trainers know those terms
Posture.
or those conditions?
Postural stability.
Okay.
Yeah, it is as simple. It's as simple as that. It's postural stability. If you want to be a football player or
Mhm.
you want to get up in the morning and not have pain in your back, you name it from A down to Z.
So give them
Posture.
some real basic real world application besides like just going over the and explaining the terms. What is just one real world application where they would address kyphosis or lordosis or any of these things?
Right from the very beginning, as soon as we look at a client, the first thing we want to do is look to see if there's any what are known as postural distortions. And all you got to do is look at somebody's shoulders, look at their head, and that's going to tell me why the client. And by the way, this is great from a sales perspective. All I got to do is look at you, and you're like, "Well, my back hurts, this hurts," and all I got to do is go, "Yeah," because literally you're in a protracted, internally rotated shoulder state, right? You're this, you're that. This, you got lordosis, you're da 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 da, and all of that, and that's why your lower back hurts. And now I can help you because I know how to fix postural distortions. And that's the key. That's the key to this is knowing that information. You can literally change somebody's life. We've had a number of times. I remember one when we were teaching live course, our photographer actually came in and he was complaining of his lower back problem. And I looked at him and I'm like, dude, come on, come over here. And I put him down and I made one quick adjustment,
Mm.
just relaxed his hip flexor a little bit, and the posterior tilting of his lumbar spine, that posterior tilting of the pelvis,
Mhm.
got it back into alignment. His back pain goes away. Is it magic? No, of course it's not magic. So knowing those, understanding that
Yeah.
allows you to look from the side and go, that's not the way you should look. I was talking to Gabby this morning. I was looking at her, and my daughter's a dancer, and I looked at her, and she's like, well, I got this adductor issue, and I just looked and I said, well, look, just get your shoulders back, go like this. But I understand the way there should be a slight lordotic curve in the cervical
Mhm.
spine, and if the head is too forward,
Mhm.
it's pain. It's pain. That's really what this always comes down to. It's always going to be a pain issue, and improper biomechanics. So, and by the way, again, I'm not going to talk about lordosis or kyphosis to a
Right.
client. I'm simply going to go, look, I need you to do this, go like this, sit up, do this, pull your shoulders back. I get really excited about this stuff, man.
Yeah. Cliff notes, man. Cliff notes. So guys, Doug, I think you nailed that one out of the park. I think we're good there. So check this out. We have come to our time here. We're going to work through a lot of these other questions. We could bring them into the next talk. Want to thank everyone for coming on today. Thanks for being a part of this talk. Thanks for bringing your questions every week to us. Remember, you can go to Body Design U, as in university, bodydesignu.com/ask, and kind of register and be a part of this. You can click on the Zoom link every week and pop in here and chat us a question, or we'll bring you on and you could ask that question live. I want to thank some of these faces, some of these names that I know of Body Design University folks. Thanks for being here, and thanks for your continued support, guys. We really appreciate you being a part of this. Doug, as always, let's leave them with something for this week. So one thing, let's think of one thing that any personal trainer out there, whether they're working as an employee, whether they're working as a 1099 or have their own studio, what's one thing that we can, ask them to work on? I think last week you came up with it, so maybe I get it this week.
It's your
Okay,
turn.
so real simple. I'm going to make it real easy. I'm going to go back to you don't have to buy this book, but set up your accounting systems. I'm gonna go back to saying, like, if you don't right now, and even if you're a 1099 contractor in just a gym, if you don't have accounting systems in place right now, I'm telling you, set them up, because it's going to help you grow. It's going to help you understand. It's going to help you set goals. It's that whole GPS thing. Without the GPS, how are you going to get to, without the roadmap, how are you going to get to where you're going? A accurate P&L is a financial roadmap, and it really is going to help provide some clarity. And remember, if you're not the type to do that yourself, which you're probably not, that's okay. You can have somebody do it for a very reasonable amount every month and do that. So I would strongly recommend everyone out there right now, if you're doing your bookkeeping, do it better. Just find a way to do it better. Dial in, spend some time this week on your bookkeeping, your accounting. So at the end of the year, you could pull reports and do your taxes and be good to go. If you don't have them set up, I would highly recommend that you just set them up. Set them up. Is that cool, Doug?
Dude, that was great. And get your own personal finances in order too. Am I allowed to say that?
Yeah. I mean, look, that kind of goes without saying. And
Yeah.
look, guys, we're when we get started, most of us were all in the struggle at the very beginning. So just know that that is completely normal, but you definitely have to have your personal finances in order while you're launching and growing a business. And I can tell you from personal experience, I've had many failures, very painful failures financially along the last 21 years. And but you pick yourself up, you do the best that you can, and you keep going. And as long as you put in the effort, you're going to make it happen. But just an improvement. That's all we're asking for this week. Just take some time, make some improvement on your personal and business finance setup. And that's really it. Doug, anything else?
Great tip. Great tip. Yeah, I had a lot of fun I had a lot of fun. Just keep sending in those questions to us. And remember, they can also send directly to me, can't they?
Yeah, I mean they can they can send them, but if they send them through the ask before they get them, we'll get a report and we'll get them in a sequential order so we can kind
Perfect.
of ask.
So we can answer
ask.
them here. Okay, great.
Yeah, yeah. So guys,
Great.
thank you so much for being a part of Personal Trainer Talk. We're going to check out here. We wish everyone an incredible rest of your week, and we will see you every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Have a great week.
Thanks,
Ciao.
guys.